Scene 2. After an intense emotional experience, Lord Melbourne decides that it has been a mistake to have rejected Victoria's declaration of love, just the day after the Rooks scene in Brocket Hall, and desperately leaves his house early in the morning, looking a scruffy appearance, and arrives to Buckingham Palace. Lord Melbourne entered the palace and without delay asked the first employee that came to pass to him to announce his presence to the Queen and notify her that his visit was as a matter of urgency, that a very serious matter that could not wait made that a meeting between them was essential. Lord Melbourne was taken to the room where he used to meet the Queen, to wait for her. Impatient and nervous, Lord Melbourne paced the room, unable to sit or stand still for long. A cluster of contradictory emotions overwhelmed and tormented him, an anguish he could not master corroded his heart. He felt his hands tremble and a chill ran through his body, even though he had come something heated by the effort of the race and nervous tension. Finally he clutched with one of his hands to the fireplace, and ducked his head, trying to calm himself as he turned his back on the door Victoria had to enter. After a while, it seemed an eternity but it was relatively brief, a servant opened the door and Victoria entered the room, and the servant closed the door behind her, leaving both alone. "Lord Melbourne, I really did not expect to see you here today. I cannot imagine that serious and urgent matter could bring you so unexpectedly to Buckingham. I hope it is not a terrible thing," said Victoria. Victoria's tone was not affectionate and cheerful, as it used to be when she talked to him. On the contrary, it was distant, cold, and serious, or at least pretended to be. And Lord Melbourne knew perfectly well the reason. Anyway, his heart beat faster when he heard her voice. Slowly he turned to look at her. Victoria was very astonished when she saw him, and the serious expression on her face became one of bewilderment. She accustomed to seeing him always groomed and dressed in an elegant way, now Victoria saw him scruffy, wearing floor-to-house clothes, which also looked as if he had slept with it, as it was, under his coat, without shaving and disheveled. But there was a savage, sensuous, masculine appeal in his disarray, with his pretty open shirt, showing his broad, masculine chest, his unshaven face that added a coarser look, his disheveled hair, to the gesture of his face that was harder than usual. Victoria reminded him of the images of the pirates of romantic novels, the savage and primitive adventurers who made to sigh to the maidens who fell in love with them, the alpha males who awakened the female libido of the young women and the not-so-young. "Lord Melbourne, has anything happened to you?" Victoria asked without being able to avoid some concern in spite of the anger that had with him. Lord Melbourne saw her with an intense and strange look that made Victoria a little nervous, who was also surprised to see that he had wet eyes. Suddenly, Lord Melbourne walked towards her with steady and fast pace, and Victoria in a spontaneous gesture went to raise her arms, but before doing so Lord Melbourne hugged her tightly and held her against his body. "Lord Melbourne," Victoria whispered weakly and trembling. Victoria was almost in shock, paralyzed by the infinite surprise. Lord Melbourne, who was too cautious and timid to approach her, that until the day before, the farthest he had come, was to take her hand and retain it in his own hands and caress her, but with her hand covered by a glove, he now dared to embrace her and unite his body with her body, in an unseemly gesture with a Queen of Great Britain by a man who was not her husband and not even her fiancé, and the fact that he was her Prime Minister only added scandal to the event. Victoria's heart began to beat rapidly. "Forgive me. Forgive me, Victoria," Lord Melbourne said in a voice that was almost broken by emotion, as he continued to hug her, his big, strong hands caressing Victoria's small back as he brushed Victoria's head with his chin because of the difference in height between them. Victoria's shock increased, for it was the first time that Lord Melbourne did not call her Your Majesty or Ma'am, but he called her by name, colloquially, and was also asking forgiveness in a very personal way. "Victoria, there are moments in life when there are no words to express what we feel, and this is one of them." "I have no words to say what I mean," said Lord Melbourne, and then put his hands on her shoulders, and pushed her aside a little from him to meet her eyes, for which Victoria had to lift her head. "Victoria, yesterday when you confessed your feelings to me and you said that you wanted me to be your life companion, and that your heart was mine, and I told you that I could not accept it and that you should preserve it for another. I did not say the truth, I did not say what really felt. And I did not do what I really wanted to do. But I did it because at that moment I felt and thought it was the best thing for you and for our country, and I did it because I wanted to protect you, and there is no greater show of love than protecting what so much we love, even if that means making the greatest sacrifice. Victoria's eyes were wide and wet, her small body trembled and her heart beat faster and faster. But now I understand that love must also be based on the truth, and that you have a right to know what lives in my heart for you. Because there are truths that should not be carried to the grave, on the contrary, deserve to be shouted at four winds. Because I also understood that the apparently most correct way is not always the suitable one, and that sometimes the sacrifice is not the noblest but a safe shortcut to hell. Now I know there is only one opportunity in life and that it is a crime to waste it, because I have paid a very high price for my mistake, and I know you will pay for it too. That's why, Victoria, it's my duty to tell you the truth, and it's your right to know it, said Lord Melbourne, and then he stroked Victoria's cheek with the fingers of one hand, causing her to shudder. Victoria, I love you. I love you. Victoria was startled a little, as if she had been hit by an electric shock, and her face reflected the mixture of emotion and astonishment. Then she began to cry. I love you, like I've never loved anyone in my life. I love you more than I ever loved my wife. I love you like I never thought I could love a person in my life. I love you with despair, I love you with tenderness, I love you with the desire of a man for a woman. You are my queen, and I adore you and serve you as such, but when I see you, I can only see the woman most beautiful, perfect, and sweet of the universe. I am not blind, and that is why I also love your defects, your impulsive and reckless character, your little discretion, your outbursts of bad character when they take the opposite of you, but I love you because you are my only reason to live, and now I have the certainty that if I lose you, I will die in the midst of the greatest pain. Every moment of the day I think of you, Victoria, in your eyes, your lips, your hair, your voice that for me is music. I wake up thinking of you and I sleep thinking about you. I love you, my sweet, beautiful, and brave Victoria. Why did not you say it yesterday, fool? Why you broke my heart? Cried Victoria, crying and pouting like a little girl. Forgive me, I told you I wanted to protect you. Lord Melbourne began to apologize. I love you. I love you too, Lord M. That's why I want you to be my companion, because my heart is yours. I love you, Lord M. Victoria exclaimed, still crying and pouting. Lord Melbourne kissed her lips, gave her a deep, passionate kiss. With his mouth he ate Victoria's small mouth, rubbed his lips with hers, sucked and nibbled on her small lips. He kissed her without letting her breathe, while with closed her eyes, she was give up to her first kiss with ecstasy. He hugged her very hard, almost hurting her, as if he afraid they would be ripped her from his arms, while one of his hands settled on the end of Victoria's back, almost reaching her butt and pressing her to tighten her against him. Lord Melbourne's mouth descended to Victoria's chin and rose again without ceasing to kiss her, and pressed his lips very hard against Victoria's lips, almost rudely. Then slowly he parted his mouth from Victoria's mouth to look at her face, her beautiful blush, her sweet and slightly amused gesture, and her eyes closed. Victoria opened her eyes and saw him almost in ecstasy, then she stepped forward and with timidity and awkwardness Victoria kissed him on the lips, her eager to experience that new experience of kissing. Lord Melbourne smirked and then he responded to Victoria's kiss with enthusiasm, with much passion. He pressed his tongue against Victoria's lips, until she opened her mouth and then Lord Melbourne thrust his tongue into her mouth. Victoria shuddered, and after a moment of surprise, she felt more aroused. She felt Lord Melbourne's tongue explore the inside of her mouth, she tasted the bittersweet taste of his breath, still with the residue of the alcohol he had drunk the night before, as they exchanged fluids. With clumsiness she sought to reciprocate him with her own tongue, and both tongues rubbed, as he held her tightly and pushed his head forward, causing her head to retreat a little. Then Lord Melbourne gently nibbled Victoria's lip, and then his mouth came down to kiss and nibble on her neck that lifted her face to see the ceiling. Victoria felt a hard lump in Lord Melbourne's crotch as his body tightened to hers. Suddenly Lord Melbourne pulled away from her, while he held her by the shoulders. "Why are you stopping?" Victoria asked with naivety and desire. "Victoria, in these situations a man is so excited that if he does not stop in time, then he cannot do it, because his body demands to have intimacy with the woman, the kind of intimacy that a decent woman is supposed to. She should only have her husband on the bridal bed," Lord Melbourne answered truthfully, but somewhat embarrassed. Victoria's eyes widened, her face turned red as a tomato, and then she ducked her head and could not help but giggle. "I see," Victoria said, trying to hide a mischievous grin. "And how will I know when your body asks you to have that intimacy with me?" "You will know, my love. There are things I will teach you in due course," said Lord Melbourne, amused and excited. "Meanwhile, come here." Lord Melbourne took her hand, then he sat down in a chair and he had that Victoria sit on his legs, much to her surprise, which she then reacted with laughter, delighted. "I have not sat on anyone's legs for many years," Victoria said, blushing and happy. "Was he more attractive than me?" asked Lord Melbourne mockingly. "Moron. It was Baroness Lazen, the last person to carry me on her legs," Victoria said with a laugh. "What do you think Baroness Lazen would do if she saw us now?" asked Lord Melbourne with sarcasm and mockery. They both laughed. "She'd kill you. And she would forget that I am the queen. She would put me face down on her legs and give me a good spanking," Victoria laughed. They talked for a while, and then Lord Melbourne explained in detail the reasons why he had to reject her proposal the day before. Victoria listened intently, her head resting on his shoulder and her hand stroking Lord Melbourne's chest through his open shirt. "I understand why you rejected me, but what made you change your mind?" Victoria asked in a soft voice. "I did not want to lose you. Now we must think of the future," Lord Melbourne replied. Lord Melbourne explained his ideas about the strategy that both could use to get approval from the country and the institutions to their marriage, ideas inspired by what Connor told him in his conversation at the brothel. "And do you think we will succeed? Do you think we will get approval from our marriage?" Victoria asked uneasily as she looked up to see Lord Melbourne in the eye. "I do not know, Victoria. It's a very risky and uncertain road. What worries me most is that it will endanger your permanence in the throne, but if we do see that the situation reaches such a serious extreme, we must give up. However, I think there are good chances of success, if we play well our cards and convince public opinion, and we get the support of powerful allies, even if that support is not free. In any case, apart from jeopardizing your permanence in the throne, you will also have to face your family. All your maternal family will be against you, especially your mother and your uncle Leopold. And you're probably going to have all your paternal family against you too," Lord Melbourne said with concern. "I know," Victoria said with some sadness. "That's why, if you do not want to risk it and you do not want to break up with your family, I'll understand, and we can forget about all this. You are still on time, I will not reproach you, and I will settle for the place you can give me in your life," said Lord Melbourne sincerely. "The only place in my life I want for you is my husband. My family has never made me happy, they have never made me feel loved, admired, and understood. You do. The only family I want is the one I would form with you, our children, if God wants us to have them. And as for the country, maybe I'm naive, but with your strategy and fighting the two together, I think we can get the necessary approval to our marriage without I lose the crown. What I regret is having to wait so long to I marry you. I'd like to get married today," Victoria said with some dismay in her last words. "Me too, Victoria. But patience is essential in big enterprises," he said sympathetically. "Lord M," Victoria began. "Call me William if you wish," Lord Melbourne replied with a smile. "William," Victoria said with a charming, cheerful smile. "I wanted to ask you, do you always look like this in the morning?" "Dirty and scruffy," he replied, amused and embarrassed. "No. Handsome and Wildly virile, Victoria said and blushed again. You look like a pirate from a romantic novel, strong, brute, bold, savage. They both laughed. Well, maybe the fact of waking up and coming directly here without barely cleaning me, without changing my clothes, and riding like a madman, like a criminal fleeing from the justice that treads his heels, maybe that has something to do. Maybe my smell is not the best right now, he said mockingly. I loved your smell. I thought it was exciting. Smell of man, Victoria answered of daring way, her eyes sparkling with desire. Victoria, if we do not get married soon, I do not know if I will be able to resist the temptation, said Lord Melbourne, and soon approached to kiss her again on the lips. The two of them kissed each other again passionately, to unite their tongues in inside of their mouths, rubbing their lips vigorously, while Victoria sat on his lap. Until Lord Melbourne broke the kiss gently. Victoria, I have to go back to Brocket Hall, Lord Melbourne said. No. Why? Victoria protested like a child when they took away her amusement. I have to wash and get dressed, I have to attend to the daily affairs of the government. Surely the boxes with the papers that I have to study and solve today must have arrived at Brocket Hall, Lord Melbourne said with a smile on his lips, while he stroked her hair. Send a messenger to Brocket Hall and ask to be sent the documents here, and also your clothes. You can clean and change here, in a guest bedroom. And when you finish dispatching the day-to-day affairs of the government, we can take advantage of it to hold our working hearings and to advance the pending issues, Victoria said enthusiastically. All right, but you must let me work while I deal with urgent business, Lord Melbourne condescendingly said. Of course. Victoria replied in delight. Victoria, there is something I want to ask you, a nonsense. If one day you and I have a daughter, I want her name's Alice, said Lord Melbourne, something moved and nostalgic. Alice? It seems a charming name, but why? Victoria asked with a smile, intrigued. I do not know, for a beautiful dream I had, I'll tell you. Lord Melbourne kissed her again, and they continued to caress each other and kiss each other with laughter.